The war had crossed its winter fields and spent its iron flame, yet victory still had to choose what peace would dare to name. The general gave his sword away before the civil hand, and service learned restraint must guard the freedom of the land. The soldier turned toward home again, the plow, the shop, the door, while graves behind the young republic asked the living more. Sacrifice preserves the dream if law itself can rise, and honor those who paid its cost beneath unfinished skies. The states were tied by paper threads that frayed beneath the strain, as debt and want and restless farms made liberty complain. When Shays' men stood their cause with arms where courts and hunger meet, the country saw that freedom needs an order it can seat. In heat of Philadelphia, the delegates took care to balance fears of kingly rule against the mob's despair. Deliberation trained the will, and judgment shaped the frame, for citizens must shape the law before they'll praise its name. They gave the branches separate hands, lest power closes one, and set checks upon ambition to ensure its work was done. The city's order shapes the soul renews the state, and justice stands between them both to measure every fate. Then rights were written like a fence around the inward breath, where conscience, speech, and worship live beyond the ruler's death. The person needs the commonwealth, yet must not disappear, for public good turns tyrant when the soul is ruled by fear. But parties rose like summer storms and darkened public sight, each side declaring only it the guardian of right. When faction feeds on private gain, the common good grows thin, patriotic words a mask to hide the faction's sin. George Washington, with warning voice, looked past his laureled day and begged the nation not to sell its whole to partial sway. Belonging needs a judging heart, and virtue needs a rein, or love of country shrinks to love of party, pride, and gain. Then came a test more quiet still than cannon, fire, or flood, when rivals passed the nation's helm without revenge or blood. The ballot taught the sword to sleep, the loser to withdraw, and liberty took root inside obedience to law. In 1812, the young republic heard thunder from the sea and watched its capital aflame beneath impiety. But Baltimore, through smoke and night, kept vigil toward the dawn, and memory found a flag still there when terror had withdrawn. The banner gathered kinship then, the dead, the spared, the brave, and made return a public dream the threatened people gave. Yet symbols must be judged by truth, not worshipped in the air, for cloth can gather memory or cover wrong with glare. The map unrolled beyond the hills. The wagons pressed ahead, while older nations watched the lines approach with quiet dread. A household loved its field and fire, its child, its plow, its span, but local duty fails when it forgets the fellow man. The road of tears through winter mud made destiny look bare, as treaty, troop, and hunger moved whole peoples from their prayer. A country cannot call land blessed by merely taking ground, for universal reason hears dispossession sound. Then conquest rode through southern dust beneath expanding skies, and glory spoke in trumpet notes while conscience answered lies. When domination wears the flag and calls itself increase, the patriot's task is not to cheer but question power's peace. The press of conscience beat the drum like hammers through the night, and abolition's printed fire refused to flatter blight. If law protects a chain and calls the captive body owed, then truth must judge the courthouse steps and block the legal road. By hidden paths and lantern signs, the hunted cross the gloom, and strangers risk their homes to shield the fugitives from doom. Memory called to kinship there, and kinship called return, where personhood, denied by law, made freedom's North Star burn. Then Douglas faced the festal day, the banners and the cry, and asked what freedom's birthday meant beneath a bondman's sky. He held the Declaration up against the nation's face, that judgment might restore the word hypocrisy made base. The House divided could not stand. The arguments grew flame, and Sumter's smoke declared that law and bondage could not claim. The Union was no parchment ghost, no song of borderlines, but a battlefield twixt justice and power's own designs. The farmer left his autumn field, the clerk his ledger page, the mother folded letters down and learned the cost of age. Sacrifice again took form in bodies, breath, and bone, yet blood demanded freedom more than victory alone. Emancipation entered the war and changed the nation's aim. No longer only union's bond, but freedom's larger claim. The city must be born again, the soul must be made new, and law must name the captive man a citizen in view. At Gettysburg the graves were still, but Lincoln heard them plead that living hands must finish what was consecrated seed. The dead gave law a deeper debt than triumph could repay. A new birth under liberty must answer where they lay. Then amendments struck the ancient chain from Constitution's page, and citizenship was written through the wounds of war and rage. Justice made the Commonwealth enlarge its guarded door, while liberty became a right the state must answer for. A freedman raised his ballot hand, a schoolhouse lit the clay, a mother wrote her child's name onto the coming day. Belief and education now strengthened one another, as public virtue learned to call the former slave a brother. But riders crossed the midnight roads with terror under hood, and faction tried to drown the law in fear and private blood. Reconstruction's promise lived, though power made retreat, a buried seed of equal right beneath the nation's feet. So patriotism passed through fire, through founding, fault, and scar, and learned the fourth must hear the graves as well as every star. The country lives when love can serve, correct, and still remain, to build from broken promises a truer public plain.